The snowstorm hammered against the windows like an angry god, a constant, whirling blur of white against the darkness. Sarah huddled deeper into the couch, her blanket cocoon doing little to ward off the draft creeping under the old window frames. The clock blinked, 11:48 p.m., in cold red numbers. Her tiny apartment on the edge of town was silent except for the howling wind. Classes were canceled, the roads shut down. She was utterly, completely alone. Or so she thought. When her phone rang, the shrill tone made her jump. Blocked number. Annoyed, she answered without thinking. "Hello?" A pause. Then a whisper, so faint she almost thought she imagined it. "Don't scream. He's already inside." Her breath caught in her throat. She slammed the phone down so hard it nearly toppled the lamp beside her. Her heart pounded, filling her ears with a heavy, panicked drumbeat. Sarah scrambled off the couch and ran to the front door. Still locked, she checked the windows. Every latch secure. She even double-checked the sliding door in the kitchen that led to a snow-buried balcony. Locked, too. Maybe it was a prank. Maybe it was just some creep bored on a stormy night. But the longer she stood there, the colder the apartment seemed to grow, as if the temperature itself were dropping, creeping into her skin. The kitchen light started flickering, buzzing, flickering again. Sarah grabbed the biggest knife from the kitchen drawer, the one she usually used to hack into stubborn frozen pizza boxes, and clutched it tight, her knuckles pale. The apartment was too quiet. No distant hum of the neighbor's TV. No footsteps from the guy upstairs. Just her own ragged breathing and the wailing storm outside. She moved from room to room, bathroom, clear, bedroom, empty, closet. The hallway closet was jammed tight, like always. Too much junk shoved inside. It hadn't budged in months. Everything seemed normal. Still, she couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Like the air itself was watching her. She paced the living room, keeping the knife in her hand like a talisman against the dark. Then 10 minutes later, her phone buzzed again. Same blocked number. Sarah stared at it, her heart hammering against her ribs. This time, she let it go to voicemail. Ding! New message. Her hand shook as she picked up the phone and pressed play. Sarah Lynn Parker, Little Bird. Her knees almost gave out. Little Bird. Only her family ever called her that, and the way the voice said it, soft, almost loving, was more terrifying than if they had screamed. Her parents were hundreds of miles away. Her sister was studying abroad. No one else knew that nickname. She gritted her teeth, forcing her panic down deep into her gut, and moved quickly. Room by room, she flung open closet doors, peered under beds, behind the shower curtain. Nothing. Nothing. Until she got to the coat closet. The door, usually stuck, now swung open easily with a creak. Inside, tucked high up on the top shelf where she kept old shoes and broken umbrellas, sat a small black burner phone. It was still warm when she picked it up. The screen was cracked, battery low, one outgoing call in the recent history. Her number. Sarah stumbled back a step, dropping the burner phone onto the floor with a thud. The front door rattled suddenly, a loud, violent bang that echoed through the apartment. She spun around, knife ready. Another bang, then silence. Sarah inched toward the peephole and squinted through it. The hallway was empty. No footprints in the snow that had drifted under the door crack. The phone in her hand buzzed again. The burner phone. Incoming call. Blocked number. She almost dropped it again, but forced herself to answer. This time, the voice on the line wasn't whispering. It was laughing, low, guttural, and horribly familiar, like a distorted version of her father's laugh. "Open the door, little bird. You forgot to check under the couch." She stared at the couch where she'd been sitting earlier. Her stomach twisted. Slowly, she crouched down, gripping the knife tighter, and lifted the edge of the couch's fabric. Two wide, bloodshot eyes stared back at her. A man wedged himself out from under the couch with unnatural speed, grabbing at her ankles. Sarah screamed, slashing with the knife, the blade nicking flesh. The man, tall, dirty, and, grinning with yellow teeth, stumbled back, blood welling from a cut on his forearm. Sarah didn't wait. She bolted for the front door, yanking at the deadbolt with shaking hands. The man lunged. She barely got the door open in time, slamming it into his face. He howled in pain, and she threw herself into the snowy hallway, slipping and sliding as she ran for the stairwell. Behind her, she heard him crash through her door, roaring like an animal. Down the stairs, barefoot and freezing, Sarah sprinted into the parking lot. Her breath came in ragged, painful gasps, her body screaming from the cold. In the distance, she saw headlights, a car moving cautiously through the storm. Waving her arms frantically, she ran into the street. The car stopped. A man inside rolled down the window. "Need help?" he shouted over the wind. Sarah nodded desperately. "Someone's after me. Please, call the police." He reached across the seat, opening the passenger door. Relief flooded through her. She scrambled inside, locking the doors. The man, mid-40s, thick jacket, grizzled beard, handed her his phone. "Here, you call. Hands are too cold." Grateful, she took it, but froze when she saw the screen. Blocked number. Incoming call. The man's face twisted into a smile. Wide, wrong, familiar. "Told you, little bird, nowhere to run." Before she could scream, he slammed something heavy into the side of her head. Darkness swallowed her whole. Sarah awoke in a basement, wrists and ankles tied with thick rope, the air thick with the stench of mildew and gasoline. Above her, footsteps creaked, voices laughing, not just one man, but several. She realized with a sinking horror that this wasn't random. They knew her childhood nickname, knew her apartment, her habits, even her family's voices. This was planned. Her mind raced for a way out, but her body was heavy, sluggish. The last thing she heard before the basement door creaked open was that same terrible whisper floating down the stairs. "Welcome home, little bird." When Megan's parents left for a weekend getaway, she had big plans. A horror movie marathon, junk food binges, and sleeping until noon without her mom's passive-aggressive, "Aren't you up yet?" The house was a classic two-story colonial, nestled on a quiet street in a small town where people still left their doors unlocked. Megan wasn't worried about being alone. If anything, she was excited. The first night was uneventful. She microwaved a bag of buttery popcorn, curled up on the couch with a stack of cheesy horror movies, and let herself sink into the couch cushions. Around 2:30 a.m., she turned off the TV and climbed into bed, feeling perfectly content. That's when she heard it. A faint, shuffling noise. It sounded like it came from above her. Megan froze under her comforter, straining to listen. Maybe the house was settling. It was old. Wood creaked. Pipes groaned. It was nothing. She rolled over, closing her eyes. Drag. The sound came again, heavier this time, like something being dragged across the attic floor directly above her room. Megan's heart thudded in her chest. She stared at the ceiling. Maybe a raccoon got in. Or squirrels. Yeah, squirrels. She shoved the covers over her head and forced herself to sleep. The next morning, she padded into the kitchen in fuzzy socks, hair messy and eyelids heavy. She opened a cabinet to grab some cereal and noticed something odd. A slice of bread was lying on the tile floor. She blinked at it, confused. The loaf was supposed to be tucked away inside the cabinet, and she knew. She hadn't touched it. She bent down, picked it up gingerly, and tossed it into the trash. Probably fell out when she was half asleep last night. No big deal. Still, a tiny worm of unease wriggled in her stomach. That night, the house felt different, heavier, as if the shadows themselves were pressing down on her. At 2:30 a.m. sharp, Megan woke up again. The room was dead silent, except for the slow, deliberate footsteps overhead. Step, step, drag. She clutched her blanket, every instinct screaming at her to do something. But she stayed frozen in fear until the footsteps stopped. In the morning, Megan decided she couldn't take it anymore. She needed to know what was going on. She needed to check the attic. Grabbing the stepladder from the garage, she positioned it under the attic door in the hallway ceiling. Her hand trembled as she reached up and tugged the string. The door creaked to open, releasing a musty, cold gust of air. She pulled herself up, peeking into the darkness. The attic was dusty, cluttered with old boxes and forgotten furniture. A single dangling light bulb lit the space dimly. That's when she saw it. In the far corner, a tattered blanket, balled up into a makeshift bed, empty food wrappers scattered nearby, a half-empty water bottle. Someone had been living up here. Megan's breath caught in her throat. She stumbled backward, and that's when she noticed something sticking out from under the blanket. A photograph with shaking hands. She picked it up. It was a Polaroid. Her face stared back at her, peaceful, vulnerable, asleep in her bed. The photo was dated. Last night. Terror gripped her so fiercely she almost dropped the picture. She whirled around, ready to flee, and the attic door slammed shut. The bulb flickered, went out. Total blackness. Megan screamed and pounded on the attic door, but it wouldn't budge. She fumbled for her phone, fingers slipping. Finally, she found it, turned on the flashlight, and that's when she heard the breathing. Slow, wet, right behind her. She spun around, flashlight beam slicing through the dark. In the corner, crouched low like an animal, was a man. His clothes were filthy, his face gaunt and smeared with dirt, wild eyes glittering in the light. He grinned, showing yellow teeth. "You were so pretty sleeping," he rasped. Megan screamed and swung the flashlight at him, catching him in the temple. He howled in pain, and she scrambled backward, tripping over a box. She needed out. Now, in a surge of adrenaline, she ran straight at the attic door, ramming it with her shoulder. The old wood cracked under the impact. She hit it again, harder, and the door finally splintered open, spilling her onto the hallway floor. She didn't look back. She didn't stop to grab her shoes. She bolted out the front door, sprinting barefoot down the street until she found the neighbor's porch and banged on the door frantically. The police arrived within minutes. When they searched the attic, the man was gone. But they found more Polaroids hidden under the blanket, photos of Megan brushing her teeth, watching TV, cooking dinner. He had been there the entire time, watching, waiting. The officers said he was likely a squatter, someone who slipped into houses and lived undetected. They said it wasn't common, but it happened. Megan's parents rushed home, horror-stricken. They changed the locks, installed security cameras. But Megan never truly slept soundly again, because sometimes, late at night, when the house is silent and the wind rattles the windows, she swears she can still hear it. Step, step, drag right above her ceiling. The rain had started around 6 p.m., a soft drizzle tapping against the windows like nervous fingers. Derek didn't think much of it. Rainstorms were common enough in fall, especially here, tucked away in the sleepy suburbs just outside Portland. His roommates, Travis and Cole, had left earlier that morning for a weekend ski trip, leaving him alone in the house they all rented together. Derek didn't mind. He relished a rare weekend to himself. Junk food, horror movies, gaming marathons, the essentials. It was around 9:03 p.m. when the lights suddenly flickered. Derek barely had time to look up from his phone before the house plunged into darkness. At first he sat there, waiting for the power to snap back like it usually did. But the seconds dragged on. Nothing. With a frustrated sigh, Derek grabbed the lighter and some candles from the kitchen drawer. He shuffled around the living room, setting them up on the coffee table. The soft orange glow gave the place a cozy, almost romantic feel. If you ignored the howling wind outside and the occasional groaning creak of the old house, settling, probably a blown fuse, he muttered to himself. He was about to head down to the basement to check when something caught his eye. The stairs, specifically the upstairs hallway. It was lit, dimly but unmistakably. A weird pale glow seeped down from the second floor like fog. Derek frowned, heart giving a small, uneasy kick that didn't make sense. If the power was out, everything should be dark. Grabbing his phone for light, he approached the staircase. The candle flames behind him wavered violently, as if protesting. As Derek climbed the stairs, the faint buzzing hum of the lights grew louder. It wasn't the sharp buzz of a working bulb. It was softer, wrong somehow, almost alive. At the top of the stairs, he paused. The hallway stretched out before him, bathed in that sickly, flickering light. To his right was the bottom guest bedroom. To his left, the bathroom. And straight ahead, the old master bedroom. The one nobody used anymore. The one his landlord said had some history, but brushed it off when they moved in. Another flash of lightning illuminated the hall, and Derek noticed it just for a second. A shape lava darting across the hallway and into the guest room. Breath catching in his throat, Derek crept forward. The guest room door was ajar. He could hear it now, a slow, deep breathing from inside, almost animalistic. Forcing his legs to move, Derek pushed the door open wider. The room was empty. No furniture except for a dusty bed frame and a cracked dresser. No source for the breathing. But it was cold, bitterly, unnaturally cold. A sharp contrast to the muggy summer rain outside. His breath came out in small clouds. Suddenly, a voice, barely a whisper, carried on the stale air from the master bedroom at the end of the hall. He doesn't know we're here yet. Derek's blood turned to ice. He wanted to run, should have run, but something pulled him forward, compelled him. He inched toward the master bedroom, heart pounding so loud he thought it would burst. The door was slightly open. Inside, darkness deeper than anything he'd ever seen before. He reached out and pushed the door open fully. The moment he did, the dim hallway lights snapped off. Total darkness, except in the center of the room, a figure stood, barely visible in the gloom, but there, tall, thin, head tilted at an unnatural angle. It seemed to hum, vibrating ever so slightly, like an image struggling to stabilize. Derek stumbled back. But before he could turn, the figure spoke. "You invited us by staying." Lightning cracked again, and for a brief second, Derek saw them. Not just the tall figure. Others, half-formed faces, smiling mouths with too many teeth, hollow eyes blinking out of the walls themselves. He bolted down the stairs, nearly tripping over the last step. But as he reached the living room, he stopped dead. The candles were out. The entire downstairs was bathed in that same sickly glow, and the front door wide open. Standing there as if waiting were two more figures. Identical, child-sized, draped in tattered, water-soaked clothes. Their heads slowly cocked to the side in unison when they saw him. Derek backed away, chest heaving, panic surging. No way out the front. No way back upstairs. He turned toward the back door, but the house was shifting now. The walls seemed to pulse, like a heartbeat, making the floorboards ripple beneath his feet. He sprinted to the kitchen, his shoes sliding on the slick, moving wood, made it to the back door, grabbed the handle, locked, fumbling, hands slick with sweat. He yanked at it, pounded, screamed. Behind him, the whispering began again. Louder this time, a chorus of voices. "You stayed too long. Now you belong to us. Let's play." Hands, small and cold, brushed against his neck. He whirled around, swinging wildly, but there was no one there. His phone, still in his pocket. Frantic, he pulled it out. No service, no Wi-Fi, no flashlight working. Just the black screen reflecting his pale, horrified face. And behind him, a third face, twisted, grinning, staring. The phone slipped from his hands and shattered on the floor. Derek bolted for the basement, the only place he hadn't checked. As he threw open the door, a wave of moldy, freezing air smacked him in the face. He didn't care. He ran, down into the blackness, not realizing until it was too late. The basement lights were still on, too. The next morning, Travis and Cole returned home to find the house exactly as they left it. Lights working perfectly, no signs of a struggle, no Derek. His car still sat in the driveway, his phone smashed in the kitchen, the candles melted to nubs. The police said he must have left in the storm and gotten lost. Maybe fell into a ravine or wandered into the woods. Search parties went out for weeks, no trace. But sometimes, late at night, the new tenants say they hear something upstairs, breathing, whispering, lights flickering when the power is just fine. And just once, a young woman living there swore she heard a voice from the master bedroom. Soft, almost curious. Does she know we're here yet? Friday nights were sacred for Luke. No school, no homework, no parents. His mom and dad had left earlier for an anniversary weekend, leaving him alone with a stocked fridge, full control of the remote, and the house to himself. He had queued up a marathon of classic horror movies, the living room lights dimmed just enough to give the night that perfect eerie glow. A giant bowl of buttery popcorn sat balanced on his lap, occasionally spilling kernels every time a jump scare got him. The final movie, a grainy 80s slasher, ended with a blood-curdling scream that cut into a hollow silence. Luke chuckled to himself, brushing popcorn crumbs off his hoodie. Click, the TV screen went black. Luke frowned, holding up the remote to turn it back on. But before his thumb could even brush the power button, the TV flickered back to life by itself. Except now, it wasn't showing credits. It wasn't even showing static. It was showing him. The screen displayed a live feed of the very room he was sitting in, captured from a high, odd angle, like from a security camera mounted behind him. Luke twisted around on the couch. No camera, no tripod, no obvious source, just the hallway stretching into darkness. He shifted back toward the TV, the popcorn forgotten. That's when he saw it. In the reflection on the TV screen, just faintly, like a water stain on glass, a dark silhouette stood right behind the couch. It was tall, almost impossibly so, with slumped shoulders and a head that seemed tilted unnaturally to one side, as if broken. Its limbs were long, thin, wrong. It didn't move. It didn't breathe. It just stared at the back of Luke's head. Luke's mouth went dry. He spun around again, fists clenched. But the hallway was empty. Only the quiet whir of the house settling filled the air. His heart pounding in his ears, Luke glanced back at the TV. The figure was closer now, much closer. It leaned forward, and for the first time, Luke saw its mouth. A gaping black void tearing open across its face, wider and wider, until it stretched from cheek to cheek. No sound came from it, but somehow Luke could feel the scream vibrating in his bones. Panic kicked in. Luke stumbled forward, grabbing the TV's power cord and yanking it from the wall. The room plunged into momentary darkness, but the screen stayed on, brighter now, sharper, and on it, the couch behind him was empty. Luke whirled around. No figure, no shadow, nothing. Okay, I'm dreaming," he whispered, pressing the heels of his hands into his eyes. "Just a nightmare. Wake up, Luke." When he dropped his hands, the TV image had changed. Now it showed the stairs leading up to his room, and on the stairs, halfway up, the silhouette, waiting, watching. Luke backed away, every instinct screaming to run, but he couldn't tear his eyes from the screen. His chest felt tight, like he was breathing through a straw. The figure took a step up, another. Luke bolted. He sprinted for the front door, yanking at the handle. It didn't budge. He twisted the deadbolt. Nothing. It was like the door had fused to the frame. He ran to the windows, locked, sealed. He beat against the glass, feeling it tremble under his fists, but refusing to break. From the corner of his eye, He caught the TV changing again. It now showed the kitchen, just a few feet from where he stood. The figure was there, standing silently behind the island counter, its head twitching in tiny broken jerks. Closer, closer. Luke grabbed the closest thing he could find, a heavy lamp, and hurled it at the screen. Glass exploded in a shower of sparks. The room went pitch black. Silence. Complete, utter silence. Luke's chest heaved as he listened for any sound, any hint that he wasn't alone. And then, soft, almost delicate, he heard it, breathing. Right behind him, slow, rattling, wet. He turned, moving as if underwater. And there it was. No reflection this time, no screen. It stood inches from his face, its featureless black mouth hanging open, drool dripping onto the floor between them. Its hands, long skeletal things, reached out, curling around his shoulders with an unnatural strength. Luke couldn't scream, couldn't move. The thing leaned closer, its breath ice cold against his cheek. Then a whisper, so faint it barely existed. "Stay with me." The house groaned louder, as if sinking in on itself. The walls twisted, the furniture stretched and bent into impossible angles. The darkness consumed the corners of the room, inching closer, swallowing everything in its path. Luke felt his body being pulled, backward, downward, into the shadow of the creature. He fought, kicked, scrambled, but it was like trying to swim through tar. His last glimpse of the real world was the smashed TV, flickering weakly in the corner, the broken screen now showing an endless hallway, stretching into blackness, filled with hundreds of silent, standing figures, waiting, watching. As he was dragged into the dark, Luke realized with a gut-wrenching certainty, he wasn't the first. He wouldn't be the last. Alyssa Morgan loved having the house to herself. No parents, no siblings, no interruptions. Just silence, pizza, Netflix, and the endless scroll of her phone. The Morgan family's Victorian home sat on the edge of a small town in Pennsylvania, bordered by thick woods that looked black under the night sky. Alyssa never thought twice about being alone out there. After all, what could happen in one weekend? By the time she finished her nightly routine, shower, teeth, hair mask, it was almost 11 p.m. She yawned, wiping the steam from the bathroom mirror with a towel. That's when she saw it. At first it seemed normal. Same brown hair, the same oversized sweatshirt. But when Alyssa blinked, she noticed it. Her reflection blinked. Half a second later, a chill rippled through her. She frowned and leaned closer. Her reflection leaned too, just slightly offbeat, like a puppet with loose strings. And then it smiled, a slow, too wide smile. Alyssa wasn't smiling. She gasped and stumbled backward, her heart racing. For a split second, she thought she was imagining it. Maybe she was just tired. Maybe the bathroom light was playing tricks on her. But when she turned around, forcing herself to look back, the mirror showed nothing, only the empty bathroom. Her reflection was gone. Alyssa ran to her room, shutting the door tight. She laughed nervously to herself, shaking out her arms like she could physically fling the fear away. "It's nothing," she muttered. "Just tired. Need sleep." Her room felt safer, warmer. She curled up under her blankets and turned on her fairy lights. The soft glow of a few dozen bulbs made the walls look pink and cozy. She fell asleep almost immediately. Tap, tap, tap. Alyssa's eyes snapped open. She checked her phone. 2:47 a.m. Tap, tap, tap. It was coming from the hallway. Sleepy and disoriented, she got up and cracked her door open. The house was dark except for the dim light from the antique mirror in the hallway, an old full-body piece her mom had found at some flea market. The mirror was vibrating, ever so slightly, like something was tapping on it from the other side. Alyssa's stomach turned. She stepped closer, slowly. When she stood in front of it, she almost screamed. Her reflection was there, but it was wearing something else. Not her sweatshirt, not her pajama pants. It wore a tattered white gown that looked like it had been dragged through mud. In its hand was a knife, a long, gleaming kitchen knife, identical to the one in their drawer downstairs. Alyssa froze, her breath caught in her throat, and then across the mirror the glass fogged up, as if someone was breathing against it. Words began to form. "Let me in." She stumbled back, heart hammering against her ribs. "No, no, no." The mirror's surface started to ripple, like water. Alyssa bolted back to her room and slammed the door, jamming her desk chair against the handle. She grabbed her phone and texted her parents, but the messages didn't go through. No service, of course. She thought about calling 911, but what would she even say? Yeah, my reflection is trying to kill me." No one would believe her. Maybe she was dreaming. Maybe this wasn't real. She had to prove it wasn't real. Armed with nothing but her phone flashlight, Alyssa crept back into the hallway. Every mirror she passed, the one above the console table, the little makeup mirror in the upstairs bathroom, reflected something wrong. In one, her face was a rotting skull, patches of hair clinging to it. In another, she had pitch black eyes, like an insect. In another, she was on the ceiling, grinning upside down. The hallway mirror stood at the end like a portal. She didn't want to look, but she couldn't help it. Her reflection wasn't there anymore. Instead, of 12 figures, one stood inside the glass. Shadowy shapes, some tall, some hunched, some crawling, and one of them, the one in front, looked exactly like Alyssa. It lifted its hand and pressed it against the inside of the glass. The glass cracked where the hand touched. "Let me in," it whispered, a voice so soft she wasn't sure if she heard it with her ears or in her mind. The crack spread like a spider web. Alyssa ran. She barricaded herself in her parents' bedroom, piling furniture against the door. She sat in the middle of the floor, clutching a baseball bat she found under the bed. Hours passed. At some point, she must have dozed off because she woke up to morning light leaking through the curtains. Everything seemed normal. She hesitated, then peeked outside. The mirrors were back to normal. Her reflection was her. She almost cried with relief. She grabbed her stuff, deciding to spend the rest of the weekend at her friend Mia's house. There was no way she was staying here. But as she hurried past the hallway mirror, she noticed something. Her reflection wasn't hurrying. It just stood there, smiling. And as she watched in horror, the Alyssa in the mirror raised the knife. The glass shattered outward, sending a blast of razor-sharp shards across the hallway. Alyssa screamed and fell back, covering her face. When she looked up, the hallway was empty. The mirror was destroyed, just a frame and shards. But there were footprints, muddy, wet footprints, leading down the stairs. Not her footprints. They led to the front door, where it stood slightly ajar, and out into the world. 48 hours later, Mia hadn't heard from Alyssa since she said she was on her way. No texts, no snaps, nothing. Police found the Morgan house empty. No signs of struggle, no blood, no fingerprints but Alyssa's. They found the smashed mirror, of course, and the footprints. But Alyssa, gone, vanished. Missing persons posters went up all over town, but there was no trace. Some people said she ran away. Others said she was kidnapped, but Mia knew the truth. Because 2 nights later, when she was brushing her teeth in her own bathroom, she saw something in the mirror, a reflection. It blinked a half second too late, and then it smiled.